Hi everyone. My name is Arnav Mehta. I'm the former president of the Hindu Student Association here at Duke. I'm here to introduce Vamsi Pamela, who will give a brief discourse on the meaning of death with recitations from the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of several sacred texts for Hindus. Vamsi got a PhD in electrical engineering at Duke and is currently the CTO of his startup company. He comes from a family of Hindu scholars and serves to perform priestly duties at various Hindu ceremonies when called upon.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. I'll be reciting a few verses from the Bhagavad Gita. It's a dialogue between Arjuna and Bhagavan Sri Krishna, who is a manifestation or avatar of the unmanifest divinity. First, I'll recite a few Sanskrit slokas, and then I'll give the translation and a brief exposition. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Asochananya Sochastvam Prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasuna gatasumscha nanusochanti panditaha natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha nachaivana bhavishyamaha sarve vayamatah param dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tatha dehantarah praptihi dhiraha tatra namuhyati Avinashitu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinashamavyayasyasya nakaschit kartumarhati Veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajamavyayam katham sah purushah partha kam ghayati hantikam Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grunhati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani Anyani samyati navani dehi Achedhyo yamadahyoyam Akledhyo soshya evacha Nitya sarvagatastanuhu Achaloyam sanatnaha Jatasya hi dhruvo mrutyuhu Dhruvam janmamrutasya cha Tasmad apariharyerthe Natvam sochitumarhasi. The translation reads thus. The blessed Lord said, You have grieved for that which should not be grieved for, yet you speak words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. For life is a continuum. It's a continuum of change. It's only paused briefly by periods of so-called birth and death. At every moment, every object is going through a change in its state of existence, and each change is death to its previous state of existence and birth to a new state of existence. Now the translation. It is not that at any time in the past, indeed was I not, nor were you, nor these other people, nor verily shall we all ever cease to be hereafter. It is postulated in the Gita here that all beings have always been in existence. That's why there is no concept of creationism in Hinduism. The Sanskrit equivalent for the creation of the world in Sanskrit is srishti, which only means projection of what already is. All the individual souls, super soul, which is God, and the world have always been existing, and they have only been changing their state from unmanifest to manifest, manifest to unmanifest, unmanifest to unmanifest, and all the combinations thereof. Now the translation. Just as in this body, the embodied self passes into childhood, youth, and old age, so also does it pass into another body. The wise man does not grieve at it. The self here is one with a capital S. It's not the little self that we are all aware of and identify with most of the time. It's not the ego, it's not our mind, it's not the intellect, it's not the consciousness, it's not the senses, it's not our memory, etc. It is something more substantial than these. Since there is no direct translation for Atma, the Sanskrit word Atma in English, it is referred to as the self with a capital S, or very loosely translated as an individual soul. And you'll note that this self is referred to as it and that. In Sanskrit, that is also a sarvanama, which means a name. It's a pronoun that can be used with respect to all. There is undeniably a subject within all of us which perceives the objects around us. So most of the externally observable world around us is only as real as our perceptions are. During the times of deep thought, a subject can be totally identified with the object, at which time the awareness of perception collapses and the subject is. It is a state of being. Once we understand and rediscover the nature of that subject, who sits like a witness within us, then we can grasp the meaning of death and come to terms with it. As I mentioned earlier, life is a continuum. It passes through various stages and various lives till the subject resolves itself. Even though we change physically and mentally over our lifetime from childhood to youth to old age, there is still a subject within us which is immutable and a witness to all these changes. We do not mourn the death of childhood, following which alone we can enter and experience youth. Similarly, in that continuum, death is only a stage which gives rise to life again. Why is life a continuum? If certain actions were performed, the reactions have to be reaped by the same subject, if not in this life, in some other life. There is no escape. So the subject takes on multiple lives till it reaches a zero balance of its net actions and reactions, which is called karma. Once it reaches a zero balance, then there is no purpose for the individual to reincarnate. At this point, the individual soul becomes one with God and does not return to the mortal, because it transcends the law of karma at that point. Bhagavan Krishna says that a wise man understands this natural progression and hence does not grieve over what is inevitable. Now the translation. The contacts of senses with objects which cause heat and cold, pleasure and pain, have a beginning and an end. They are impermanent, transitory, and fleeting. Therefore, endure them bravely, O Arjuna. That firm man, whom surely these afflict not, to whom pleasure and pain are alike, is fit for realizing the immortality of the self. The unreal has no existence, and the real never ceases to be. The reality of both these has been seen by the knowers of truth. Know that meaning that, the self, to be indestructible, by which all this is pervaded. No one can cause the destruction of that, the imperishable. All these bodies of the embodied self have an end. The self is eternal, indestructible, and incomprehensible. They are both ignorant, he who knows the self to be capable of killing and he who takes it as killed. For verily the self neither kills nor is it killed. The self is not born, nor does it ever die, nor does it become only after being born. Unborn, eternal, changeless, and everlasting. It is not killed when the body is killed. Whosoever knows it to be indestructible, eternal, unborn, and inexhaustible, how can that man slay or cause others to be slain? Just as a man casts off his worn-out clothes and puts on new ones, so also the embodied self casts off its old body and enters new ones. This is a very famous verse and a widely held belief among Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains. Changing of our clothes, which are worn out, into new ones, is not painful to any of us. Similarly, when the complex of the mind, intellect, ego, consciousness finds that its embodiment is worn out, it simply, and that it can no longer help its evolutionary pilgrimage, it will change into a new embodiment. This wearing out can be independent of the age or the physical, biological condition. The following verse from the Gita points out what the true nature of the self or Atma is. Weapons cleave it not, fire burns it not, water wets it not, wind dries it not. This self cannot be cut, nor burnt, nor wet, nor dried up. It is eternal, all-pervading, stable, immovable, and everlasting. This self is said to be unmanifest, unthinkable, and unchangeable. Therefore, knowing this to be such, you should not grieve. But even if you think of it as being constantly born and constantly dying, even then, O Arjuna, you should not grieve. Because certain is death for the born, and certain is birth for the dead. Therefore, over the inevitable, you should not grieve. Before birth, beings are not manifest to our human senses. At death, they return to the unmanifest again. They are manifest only in the interim between birth and death. What occasion then for lamenting? One sees this self as a wonder, another speaks of this self as a wonder, another hears of this self as a wonder. Yet having heard, still none understands this at all. This, the indweller of everybody, is ever indestructible, O Arjuna, and therefore you should not grieve for anyone. So let's all pray that Abhijit's Atma, or the soul, reaches the supreme goal of this life, which is the abode of God. Please repeat this prayer after me. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrutyorma amrutam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This verse is taken from Rig Veda, which was composed around 2000 BC. The meaning for this verse is, O Lord, lead us from illusion to reality, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to everlasting existence in you. Om, peace, peace, peace. Now some of Abhijit's friends and colleagues will give eulogies, first starting with Professor Larson.
It's indeed my very deep honor to have been Abhijit's advisor and to have the chance to remember him in his life on this occasion. Many of you may be aware, generally at least, of the path that he followed to arrive here at Duke. He was born in Totanagar, raised in Calcutta, and earned 2 mechanical engineering degrees while still in India. A bachelor's degree from Jadavpur University in 2001, and a master's degree from IIT Kanpur in 2004. He then followed this by working at the GE Global Research Center in Bangalore for 2 years. His career at this time was by all accounts highly successful. He contributed to published research while in graduate school and at GE. And in fact, we found out this last fall that some of the work he'd participated in industry had been recently submitted for patents. It's about this time, when he was at GE, that my story with him at least picks up. He decided to apply to Duke and a number of other top graduate schools with the aim of building upon his demonstrated engineering promise with the technical and intellectual depth that would enable him to develop further his obvious gift for research. We began corresponding and talking by telephone in early 2006, and it's really sort of at that point, I would say, that our friendship started. So my first job was to convince Abhijit to come to Duke. And that wouldn't be easy, because he'd applied to many excellent graduate schools, and as I think his colleagues could attest, they were all offering him admission. Everybody wanted him to join their university, and clearly he possessed the traits that we as faculty prize so much in our students. He was open to new ideas. He had a top quality background, obviously. He had the intellect and creativity needed for new discovery, and a very hard worker. He did eventually decide to come to Duke, obviously, and I'd be less than truthful if I didn't tell you that my feelings about that at the moment are actually quite complex. It's kind of an interesting combination of gratitude and pain at the moment. Obviously, gratitude for the rich contributions he made to so many of our lives, and I think are evidenced by the photos that we've seen and the stories we've told each other in the last few days, but pain also, in that ultimately his coming here led to the senseless and tragic act that took him from us last week. Like all faculty, I feel a great responsibility for my role in caring for all students. But as a mentor, I feel this responsibility particularly acutely for those students like Abhijit, whom I personally recruit here. It's going to take some time and some self-reflection to come to grips with what has happened. But I think it might help all of us to share some of the things about Abhijit that made him so special. And I think that's really, in large part, what we're here to do today. Since he came in late August in 2006, Abhijit was a ray of sunshine to everyone who met him. Technically, it was obvious right away to his professors and colleagues in the lab and in the broader Duke community that he was going to be highly successful as a PhD student. But I should emphasize, Abhijit would never have told you that. And in fact, I strongly suspect that he might not have even admitted that to himself. He and I were working together in the field of computational contact mechanics. Try not to have too much jargon here. But in a nutshell, what that field is about is developing computer algorithms that enable engineers to model problems in mechanical and civil engineering where mechanical contact and friction play a role. And in fact, you can find folks back to Da Vinci in antiquity that were concerned with this problem. It's a very important problem in engineering and the sciences. There are many applications of such algorithms in almost any field in the engineering world, but a very important one comes in the tire industry. It's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. And in a very short time, we developed a very close relationship working with Michelin. Abhijit worked very closely with me, other lab mates, and Michelin engineers, both in the United States and France, developing the software tools that engineers are going to use to make automobile and truck tires safer, more resilient in the face of rough road conditions, and longer lasting. In that sense, it's a comfort that the contributions that he made are really going to positively affect the people in his world. I'd characterize the work that he did as thorough, absolutely detail-oriented and clearly conceived, and he'd already displayed a level of creativity in the work that he did that gave him unlimited potential as a research and engineering scientist. So clearly, the loss of such a promising intellect at such an early stage is by itself a tragedy, and it's one of the more difficult things to accept, I think, for all of us who knew him about what has happened. But as acute as that loss might have been, I think most of us would agree that what we'll miss the most about Abhijit are his personal traits. His cheerfulness, his respectful nature and care for others, his playful and adventurous spirit, and his innate ability to really know, somehow sense, when one of his friends really needed a kind word or supporting gesture, and in a very quiet, subtle way to provide that. in a way that made them feel better. We've been talking in my family and lab the last few days about what we'll remember most fondly about Abhijit. Whether he was going to basketball games with Justin, or attending French film festivals with Jessica, or playing chess with my son, or camping with friends in the Smokies. We find that Abhijit was always up for an adventure, and his interests were as diverse as they were deep. He liked to cook. He liked to read poetry. He liked to tell his professors about his native Bengal. He liked photography. He liked to eat chocolates from the group's candy dish. He liked life. I think that he really enjoyed his life here at Duke, and I know for certain that he made the most of it. My wife and I have a joke about cooking. We say that I cook like an engineer, and she cooks like an artist. So what I mean by that is if I cook something, you can give me a horrendously complex recipe, but if there's a fairly good protocol written down, I can follow it. Jennifer cooks like an artist, in the sense that she can get home with no earthly idea of what's in the cupboard, throw it open, and make something without any advanced planning and usually involving a great deal of improvisation. So I asked the lab members yesterday how they thought Abhijit cooked, and they unanimously said, like an artist. It turns out, in fact, that as an artist cook, Abhijit teased his friends who needed measuring devices when cooking. In other words, somehow using the tablespoon measure or the cup is a sign of weakness. So the thing that's funny about that is my wife teases me about precisely the same thing. Clearly, although Abhijit might have learned some engineering mechanics from me, I would have benefited enormously from some cooking lessons from him. Everyone in our group remembered how he loved to make his friends a meal. Not necessarily so much, it seems, for the eating itself, but more for the pleasure that this food gave his friends and for the fellowship that came with the shared meal. I know that any of us would give anything for one of those meals with Abhijit now. In closing, I think that Abhijit came to the U.S. and to Duke for the same reason that so many of you do. He was full of hope and anticipation for the things that he would learn, for the discoveries that he would help make, for the personal growth that he would experience, and for the relationships that he would develop. It's my fervent hope, and indeed in my heart of hearts, my belief, that he found those things here. We always exhort Duke students to engage themselves in their learning. Abhijit didn't require that exhortation. As much as he may have derived from this experience, though, I'm sure that we drew so much more from him than he ever required or wanted from us. I think I speak for everyone in our lab when I say that we truly loved him. My wife Jennifer and I have 2 boys ourselves, and we can scarcely contemplate the depth and the pain of the loss his family might feel and must feel. So to Abhijit's family especially, please know that I, along with the entire Duke community, are with you. In fact, we view Abhijit as a member of our family also. And we were made better people by even this short time that you allowed us to share him with you. May our wishes and support and those of the friends he made all over the world be of comfort to you in this time of inexplicable loss.
I don't know where to start, but I've known Abhijit for about 4 years now, but it seems I've known him since his childhood. He was a child always. I was his team member back in India, and where we were working for the GE Global Research Center. As Professor Larson mentioned, there were many good schools in the US who wanted Abhijit, but there was an opposite force back in India. None of our team members, not even our manager, especially our manager, he didn't want Abhijit to leave. Every other day he would call him to his cabin and try to convince him to stay back. It was exceptional. I mean, Abhijit was just too brilliant. My manager had a way, like he used to say, GE has a way of knowing where to position people. If you're technically good, they'll make you work, else they'll make you a manager. Well, with Abhijit, he was challenged. Like, Abhijit could, if you talk to him about philosophy, literature, any topic, he would just zap you with his brilliance. It's difficult. Well, when I was there and he was telling me very often to come to Duke, he had a way of explaining things. I would say, like, what's about it on Duke? And he would say, you should join Duke, you know. The reason is you've been my senior in GE for 2 years, and it's my turn to get back at you. I mean, he always did things which he liked. He never cared for what people thought of what he did. He just did it because he liked what he did. Like, even now I'm thinking that he's away from class for a couple of weeks because he's just bored of attending them, and he'll be back next week. He lived his life to the full, I should say. I mean, he enjoyed life. People enjoyed being with him. He was always out there helping people. It's difficult to find a person like him around here. Thanks.
I'm Sujata Jagannathan, a graduate student at Duke. I've known Abhijit for a year and a half now. We joined Duke at the same time. We stayed in the same neighborhood. We had common friends. We slowly started hanging out together a lot. And at some point of time, we used to meet like every evening and have tea together, go to movies, have dinner. And, all this while I always used to wonder, like, how is he able to smile all the time? I mean, I was taking 2 courses and doing my lab work, and I always used to complain that I have so much to do. And he was doing 3 courses, doing a TA-ship, and working in a lab, and I've never seen him complain. Not once. He had never seen him, upset or sad about anything. He's just had the smile always on his face. And on top of all this workload, he also used to be able to watch movies, read books, and that used to be the main topic of our discussion whenever we meet. And one day he gave me this movie called Before Sunrise. It's like a romantic, feel-good movie. He said he really liked the book, he really liked the movie, and that it made him want to fall in love. And I started teasing him. I was like, yeah, you take 3 courses a semester and stay in love all the time, and a girl will come find you. And then I was like, yeah, maybe you're here for another 4 years. Maybe it's time enough, for that to happen. And he just smiled. He didn't say anything. I don't know what was going on in his mind. Of course, we didn't know his time was running out. We used to argue a lot. Abhijit loves to argue. Like, sometimes he would just support a side because he wants to keep the argument going. And he would be like, if we agree on everything, there's no fun. That's what he would say. He was very fun-loving and cheerful. I think if Abhijit were in this room right now, he would tell us not to worry and be happy. Not sad that we could not spend enough time with him, but be happy that at least we got to meet him and know him and spend whatever time we had with him. I'll remember Abhijit for several things. For the crazy arguments we have had, the crazier philosophies that we used to share, and for the awesome Kaju ka halwa that he made one day, and for the Little Prince book that he gave me, which I'll never get to return to him. I think as long as we think of Abhijit and cherish the memories we have with him, he'll live with us forever. That's what I want to think.
It's a strange occasion at which I'm supposed to say something about Abhijit. And I was wondering if I would come over here and say something, or whether I would be able to do that. But yes, I might as well do something. I came to know Abhijit more than 10 years back, my first year undergrad school. I remember him being almost the same as he was now, tall, thin, all skin and bones. I used to wonder how you get so much energy, always chatting, laughing, making jokes, arguing. You do things which will seem strange, like you'll be a defender in the soccer field or be a fast bowler in the cricket field. He was a brilliant student always. There's nothing to say about that. Remembering those times now, it feels very strange. After we did our undergrad, I joined another company to work there, and he went over to the IIT to do his master's, and then I went over to Bangalore and he worked there for 2 years. And when I was leaving there to come over to US to do my master's, he joined GE, and before I left for the US, we met once there and had dinner. And from then I started asking him, when are you going to come over to the US? You need to do a PhD, man. I came over in Texas and I was there for a couple of years, and I then came over to NC State, and he also joined Duke, so we are just trying to meet once again here. In the last 1.5 years, it's been he's been like a family, not only to me, but my sister and brother-in-law who stay over in Chapel Hill, and he used to meet us almost every other weekend. We used to share time, jokes. He's always so fun-loving, so cheerful. You could talk about anything for hours, chat. And it feels very bad, but people who have come to know him, he has left a mark in their lives. His warmth, his caring nature. He was a person who used to laugh straight from out of his heart. He didn't need to make any effort to do that. And one of his friends pointed out, he was always he was working so hard, taking courses, doing lab work, and he never used to complain anything about that. And always had a smile on his face. I just hope that wherever he is, he's still happy, and maybe he's not looking at all of us and smiling in his own way. That's all I have to say right now. Nothing else. I think Mrs. Prabha Garg will do some devotional hymns now. And thanks for listening.
In the beginning, I'm going to recite a few shlokas, and the Rajshri is going to accompany me with symbols. These shlokas are in Sanskrit language, and they describe the true nature of human spirit, which is absolute existence, absolute knowledge, and absolute bliss. So the last line on each shlokas, Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham, that's what it is, that we are all absolute existence, absolute knowledge, and absolute bliss. So it is a kind of celebration of the human spirit. मनोबुद्धि अहंकार चित्तानि नाहं न चक्षुर्जिह्वे न च घ्राण नेत्रे न च व्योम भूमिर्न तेजो न वायुर् चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राण संज्ञो न वै पंचवायु न वा सप्त धातु न वा पंचकोशः न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्थवायु चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेष रागो न मे लोभ मोहो मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्य भावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मंत्रो न तीर्थो न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकार रूपो विभुत्वाच सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां सदा मे समत्वं न मुक्तिर्न बन्धः चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानंद रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम्. This is the devotional song, which was one of the favorite songs of Mahatma Gandhi and was the part of the morning prayer every day. And it was composed by the great poet and saint of the 15th century, Narsingh Mehta. I'll give you the little translation of this devotional song. And Ashwin is going to accompany us on tabla with this. And Rashtra is going to accompany on cymbals. The meaning of this bhajan is who is the decent person? And he says, the one who shares another's sorrow but does not take pride in it, or he doesn't brag about it, who speaks not a word of evil against anyone. Blessed is the mother who has given the birth to such a person. One who honors women like he honors his mother. He does not covet another's worldly goods, who does not long for the worldly wealth or fame, and on his lips always there is God's name. All places of pilgrimage are within him, and he has conquered greed, is free of deceit, lust, and anger. Such is the person that we all should try to develop into. वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीर पराए जाने रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीर पराए जाने रे। पर दुखे उपकार करे तोए मन अभिमान न आने रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे सकल लोक मां सहुने बंदे निंदा न करे केनी रे। वाचिकाछ मन निश्चल राखे धन धन जननी तेनी रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे समदृष्टि ने तृष्णा त्यागे पर स्त्री जेने मात रे। जिह्वा थकी असत्य न बोले पर धन नव झाले हाथ रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे मोह माया व्यापे नहीं जेने धृण वैराग्य जेना मन मारे। राम नाम शो ताली लागे सकल तीरथ तेना तन मारे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे बन लोभी ने कपट रहित छे काम क्रोध निर्वाय रे। भय नर सयो तेनो दर्शन करता कुलवे को तरताय रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीर पराई जाने रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे। This is the Ramdhan, a kirtan that we all are supposed to sing together. So if you can repeat after me, I'll appreciate that. रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज प्यारे तू सीताराम। सीताराम सीताराम भज प्यारे तू सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। जय रघुनंदन जय सिया राम, जान के बल्लभ सीताराम। जय रघुनंदन जय सिया राम, जान के बल्लभ सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरो नाम, सबको सम्मति दे भगवान। ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरो नाम, सबको सम्मति दे भगवान। रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। With the Gayatri mantra, which is a very important mantra, and we always finish our prayers with that mantra. And those who know it, please say it with me. Om Bhur Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. It means God is our creator, protector, and dissolver. God is kind, charitable, and all-knowing. We pray to God to inspire our thinking, action, and speech towards positive and righteous direction, so that we all may be successful in achieving the mission most worthy of human life. We pray to God to grant peace to dear Abhijit's departed soul, and courage to his parents, friends, and near and dear ones to bear this enormous loss. And there is an announcement from International House.
I just want to say International House will be open tonight until 9 p.m. for anyone who wants to come by. I'm sure members of Abhijit.
Yes, and there will be refreshments outside.